There is a question that has been circling around the internet for the last 15 years, and every time someone tries to answer it, they pull out a spreadsheet, run some numbers, and almost always land on the same conclusion. Renting is smarter. They will show you how much interest you pay over 30 years. They will show you maintenance costs, property taxes, insurance. They will add it all up and say, see, if you had just invested that down payment into the stock market, you would be ahead by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And honestly, looking at the math alone, sometimes they are right. But here is what nobody talks about. The math assumes you are a robot. It assumes you will take that money you saved from not buying a house and invest every single dollar of it, consistently for 30 years, without ever touching it, without ever pulling it out for a vacation, without ever dipping into it for a new car, without ever spending it on something you convinced yourself you deserved. And that is where the entire argument falls apart, because you are not a robot. Neither am I. And the rent versus buy debate was never really about math in the first place. And if that already makes sense to you, you are going to want to hear what comes next. Hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss our content, because we actually make deep topics which affects your lives. Let me take you somewhere for a moment. Let me take you to the version of your life where you are 43 years old. You have been renting for the last 20 years. You have moved 6 times, maybe 7. Every time, you packed up your life into boxes. Every time, you reassembled your furniture. And every time, a few pieces did not survive the move. The bookshelf that wobbled after the 3rd apartment. The dining table with the scratched legs. The couch that somehow lost a cushion between moves, and you never figured out where it went. You have no roots anywhere. You have surface-level friendships in the city you currently live in. You know the barista at the coffee shop near your apartment, but you also knew the barista at the last coffee shop near your last apartment, and the one before that. None of them remember you. Your landlord just told you the rent is going up again, 9% this time. You do the math and realize your rent has doubled since you first moved to this city. You think about moving again. You look at listings. Everything is more expensive. You feel stuck, not because you made a bad decision, but because you never made a decision at all. You just kept drifting, month to month, lease to lease, city to city. Now let me take you to a different version. Same age, 43, but in this one, you bought a house when you were 28. It was not your dream house. It was small, 2 bedrooms. The kitchen was outdated. The backyard was more dirt than grass, but it was yours. For the first 5 years, it felt heavy. The mortgage was tight. You skipped vacations. You drove the same car for 8 years. You did not upgrade your phone every cycle. There were months where you questioned whether you made the right call. But then, something shifted. Your income grew, but your mortgage did not. That fixed payment that used to take 40% of your income now takes 22%, then 18%, then 15%. Meanwhile, your neighbor who rents the place across the street is paying more every single year. His rent today is what your mortgage was back when you first bought, except his payment is going up. Yours is not. Yours will never go up. That is the part the spreadsheets leave out. Let me talk about what is actually happening in the economy right now, because this matters more than most people realize. Everything around you is moving to a subscription model. Your music, your movies, your software at work, your phone is probably on a monthly payment plan. Your car might be leased. Some companies are even experimenting with furniture subscriptions. You pay monthly, and when you want something new, they swap it out. Think about that for a second. There are companies whose entire business model depends on you never owning anything. They want you to pay forever. They want a permanent revenue stream from you, from the day you start earning until the day you stop breathing. Your streaming service will never send you a letter that says, "Congratulations, you have paid enough. Enjoy free movies for the rest of your life." Your car lease will never end with you owning the car unless you specifically structured it that way. Your rent will never stop. It will never go down. It will never be done. A mortgage is one of the last financial instruments in your life that actually ends. You make payments, and one day they stop. And what you are left with is something that belongs to you completely. In a world designed to keep you paying forever, owning your home is one of the few ways to step off that treadmill. Now let me address the math, because I know some of you are waiting for it. People who argue for renting love to bring up something called rental yield, and it is a real number. In many American cities right now, in 2026, The gross rental yield on a property sits somewhere between 3 and 5%. That means if a home is worth $400,000, the annual rent collected on it might be around $12,000 to $16,000. Divide that by the property value, and you get your yield. And then the renting advocates say, well, look, the stock market has historically returned around 8 to 10% annually. So why would you put your money into something that yields 3 to 5% when you could get double that in an index fund? And on paper, that logic holds up. But there are 3 things they never mention. First, when you buy a home with a mortgage, you are using leverage. You are putting down maybe 5 to 20% of the property value and controlling 100% of the asset. If you put $80,000 down on a $400,000 home and that home appreciates to $500,000 over several years, your return is not based on the full $400,000. It is based on the $80,000 you actually invested. That is a 125% return on your equity. The stock market does not give you that kind of leverage unless you are borrowing on margin. And borrowing on margin to invest in stocks is a recipe for disaster that can wipe you out overnight. Second, nobody talks about the mortgage interest deduction. If you are paying interest on your home loan, a significant portion of that interest is tax deductible. For a married couple filing jointly, that deduction can save you thousands of dollars every single year, especially in the early years of the mortgage, when most of your payment is going toward interest. These tax savings effectively reduce your real interest rate. So when someone tells you your mortgage rate is 6 or 7%, your actual after-tax cost might be closer to 4 or 5%. Nobody puts that in the spreadsheet. Third, and this is the one that matters most, they assume that the money you save by renting will actually be invested every single month, without fail, for decades. Let me tell you what actually happens. You save a few $100s a month by renting instead of buying. The first year, maybe you invest it. The second year, you invest most of it. The third year, your car breaks down and you pull some out. The fourth year, you want to go to Europe with your friends and you tell yourself you will make it up next year. By the fifth year, you have maybe invested 40% of what you were supposed to. By the 10th year, you cannot even remember what the plan was. A mortgage forces discipline. It is a gun to your head in the best possible way. You cannot skip it. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot tell your bank that you will pay double next month because this month you really want a new television. The payment goes out every month, no matter what. And because of that, you build equity, whether you feel like it or not. Compare that with voluntary investing. Voluntary anything. The gym membership you stopped using in March. The journal you were going to write in every morning. The budget you set up in January and abandoned by February. Human beings are not wired for voluntary, long-term discipline. We need structure. We need systems that do not give us a choice. A mortgage is that system. Here is another thing nobody mentions in the rent versus buy debate. What happens if you die? I know that sounds dramatic, but if you are the primary earner in your family, this is not a theoretical question. This is the most practical question there is. If you are renting and you die, your family has to keep paying rent out of whatever savings exist, out of whatever life insurance payout they receive, if there even is one. And that rent keeps going up every year forever. If you own a home with a mortgage, most mortgages come with life insurance built into them, or you can get a term life policy that covers the remaining balance. If something happens to you, the house is paid off. Your family has a roof over their heads. They do not have to figure out where to go. They do not have to worry about making rent while they are grieving. They do not have to move. That is not an emotional argument. That is the most practical, cold, hard, rational argument you can make for owning a home. Your family's shelter does not depend on your continued existence and continued income. The house is there, paid for, done. Try doing that with a stock portfolio. Try explaining to your grieving spouse which brokerage account to log into, which funds to sell, how to calculate capital gains taxes, and how to set up a monthly withdrawal that keeps pace with rising rent for the next 40 years. It is not going to happen. You know it, I know it. A house is simple. It is there. Your name is on it. And when you are gone, it is still there. People will also tell you that buying a house ties you down, that you lose flexibility, that you cannot move to a new city for a better job, that you cannot take that opportunity in Denver or Austin or wherever the next hot market is. And I understand that concern. I really do. But let me push back on it gently. How many times have you actually moved cities for a job in the last 10 years? How many times did that move genuinely change the trajectory of your life in a way that nothing else could have? For most people, the answer is once, maybe twice. And often, the moves they made were not even for significantly better opportunities. They were lateral moves dressed up as promotions. A 10% raise in a city with 15% higher cost of living. There is something to be said for planting yourself somewhere, for choosing a city and committing to it, for knowing your neighbors, for having a mechanic you trust, and a doctor who knows your history, and a grocery store where the checkout person recognizes your face. That is not being stuck. That is having a life. The most successful people I have seen are not the ones who jumped from city to city chasing slightly better salaries. They are the ones who picked a place, built relationships, built equity, built community, and let compound interest do its work, both financially and socially. When you own a home in a community, you are invested in that community in every sense of the word. You vote on local issues because they affect your property value. You care about the school district because it affects your neighborhood. You maintain your yard because you plan to be there next year and the year after that. Renters do not do this, not because they are bad people, but because they have no reason to. They are passing through, and when you are passing through, you do not plant trees. Let me talk about when you should buy, because timing matters, even if the answer is simpler than people think. The answer is as soon as you reasonably can, not as soon as you can afford a mansion, not as soon as you can buy the house you have been picturing in your head since you were 22, the one with the big kitchen and the wraparound porch and the finished basement. That house is not your first house. That house is your third house, maybe your fourth. Your first house just needs to be a fixed place, a place that is yours, a place where you stop paying someone else's mortgage and start paying your own. If a house in your area costs $300,000, you need somewhere between $15,000 and $60,000 for a down payment, depending on the loan type. If you are married and both working, that becomes much more achievable. And I will say this plainly, if you are thinking about marriage, finding a partner who earns a decent income and shares your financial values is one of the most important financial decisions you will ever make. More important than which stock to pick, more important than which index fund to buy. A household with two incomes and shared goals can do things that a single income never can. And when you do get married, spend as little as possible on the wedding. I know that sounds unromantic, but the data is clear. The average American wedding costs somewhere around $30,000. That money, put toward a down payment instead, changes the entire trajectory of your financial life. The $30,000 wedding does not make your marriage stronger. The biggest predictor of divorce in America is financial stress. So if you blow $30,000 on a single day and then spend the next 5 years arguing about money, you have not invested in your marriage. You have undermined it. Buy the house. Have a small wedding. Start building. Let me tell you something about the people who tell you not to buy a house. Most of them sell financial products, mutual funds, index funds, brokerage accounts. They need your money in the market, not in real estate, because they do not earn fees on your mortgage. They do not earn commissions on your property appreciation. They earn money when you invest through them. So of course they are going to run the numbers in a way that makes renting look smarter. Their income depends on it. I am not saying the stock market is bad. It is an incredible wealth building tool, but it is not the only tool. And the idea that you should skip home ownership entirely so you can put everything into the market is advice that benefits the advisor more than it benefits you. The truth is, you need both. You need a home that is building equity while you sleep, and you need investments that are growing in the market. These are not competing strategies. They are complementary ones. The rent you are not paying once your mortgage is done can go straight into investments. The equity in your home can be leveraged for future purchases if you choose. One feeds the other. But you have to start with the foundation. And the foundation is shelter. It has always been shelter. Before stocks existed, before mutual funds, before brokerage accounts, before any of it, human beings understood that securing a place to live was the first priority. Food, clothing, shelter. In that order. Everything else comes after. There is one more thing I want you to think about, and then I will leave you with it. Your boss can fire you. We have all seen the layoffs in 2024 and 2025. We have all seen entire departments wiped out with a single email. We have all seen people who thought their jobs were safe discover that nothing is safe. When that happens, and it can happen to anyone, the first question you ask yourself is, can I survive this? If you are renting, your survival clock starts ticking immediately. You have your savings, whatever that is, and you have monthly rent that does not care whether you have a job or not. Every month that goes by without income, you are watching your runway shrink. And if it takes 6 months to find a new job, which is not uncommon in this economy, you might burn through $20,000 or $30,000 just in rent, just for the privilege of having a roof. If you own your home, your survival clock is different. Yes, you still have a mortgage payment, but if you have been paying for 10 or 15 years, you have built substantial equity. You have options. You can refinance. You can negotiate with your lender. In extreme cases, you can sell and walk away with money in your pocket instead of nothing. But more importantly, psychologically, you know you have a place. Nobody can tell you to leave. Nobody can raise your rent. Nobody can decide they want to renovate and give you 60 days to find somewhere else. You have ground beneath your feet. And when everything else is uncertain, that certainty matters more than any spreadsheet will ever show you. You can eat cheap noodles. You can wear old clothes. You can cancel every subscription and drive a 10-year-old car, but you cannot live on the street. And when you own your home, living on the street is not a possibility you ever have to consider. That is not emotional thinking. That is survival thinking. And survival is as practical as it gets. So here is where I land on this. The rent versus buy debate is not really a debate. It is a distraction. It is a way for people who sell financial products to keep you renting so they can manage your money instead. It is a way for people who are afraid of commitment to justify their fear with math. It is a way for people who do not want to sacrifice today to pretend they are being smart about tomorrow. Buying a home is not easy. It requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. It requires saying no to things you want right now so you can have something permanent later. It requires a smaller car, an older phone, fewer trips, and more patience than most people are comfortable with. But at the end of it, you have something real, something that does not disappear when you stop paying, something that your children can inherit, something that no landlord, no corporation, and no subscription model can ever take from you. The world wants you to rent everything: your music, your movies, your car, your home, your life. It wants you on a monthly payment plan from birth to death, never owning anything, always dependent on the next paycheck to keep the lights on. Buying a home is one of the few ways to say no to that, to step outside the system, even just a little, and build something that is actually yours. You do not need the perfect house. You do not need the perfect time. You do not need the perfect interest rate or the perfect market conditions. You just need to start. And the best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is now. Subscribe if you want more talks about money, career, and life you actually control. I'm Justin, and this is Real Finance Education. I will see you in the next one.